I want to talk about the idea of change. A lot of people come to spiritual practice wanting to change. However you want to interpret that word, it usually embodies something having to do with growing, evolving, transforming, and mostly arriving at something transcendent and beyond who you are. And it's a noble calling to change. Part of that process has nothing to do with any effort on your part. In fact, most of it has nothing to do with any effort on your part. You just grow and change biologically, physically, day by day. In the beginning, it's getting older, bigger, stronger, more capable, smarter, fuller, arriving at more extraordinary aspects of who you have always been. And then, somewhere in the middle of all that, losing much of what you've arrived at. Until everything, literally everything, gets taken away. Talk about change. It's a big, powerful ride, and we're all on it. It is one road with one destination. And you don't have to do much. Show up. In a way, you can't help it. It's happening whether you like it or not. You're on it. You might wonder why you were born in the first place, but here you are. Somehow, in the process of growing and changing, you learn a lot. You learn about who you are and who you're not, who you would like to be, who you wished you had become, the life you wished you'd had over the life you got. You start to feel the intensity of being inside a body, especially when it starts to give way. It becomes totally up to you to hold it together in ways that you may never have understood or expected. The joy of being young is you don't have to do much. But as you get older, the demands are much greater and very powerful. Harder, in fact, than anything you had to deal with when you were young. I was just on a family vacation in a place nearby called Mohonk Mountain Lodge. 50 years ago, very likely this weekend, Blanche and I, who were dating at the time, went there. And we both said, if we ever get married or have children, we'd like to bring them here. A year later, we got married. A few years after that, we had children, started to have children, and we did bring them there. We brought our parents there. We brought siblings there. We went to this place that seemed to be changeless. It was always the same. It's an old Victorian lodge that still looks exceedingly Victorian. It's quite beautiful. It's become unbearably upscale and almost unaffordable. But this past week, we took my grandchildren there. And so we have this 50-year cycle of coming together as a couple, having children, having grandchildren, and coming to a changeless place. That doesn't happen a lot. In certain places like New York City, you can kind of, Central Park is still Central Park. Times Square in its own funny way is still Times Square, and you can have certain touchstones in life that tell you it's still the same, and you get to look at yourself in relationship to all of that. And as we were walking around Mohonk, which has these incredible trails and beautiful vistas and views, and I took a long walk just by myself, and this profound understanding hit me that I am still the same schmuck I was when I was in my 20s or teens, that I have not really changed. That life has changed, if you will. It keeps moving along. Things happen. I definitely took certain paths along the way that created career, created marriage, created children, and created a kind of spiritual life. But these were all, in a way, happening. I can take credit for it, I suppose, but I don't know where that credit comes from. Mostly I stumbled upon the entire journey. And the person who stumbled upon the journey is still Bruce. Now, one of the great things that happened on this journey was an initiatory moment in the 1960s where I suddenly, because my roommate was friendly with Tim Leary, I managed to ingest this drug, this LSD, that completely blew apart the world as I knew it. And you've all heard this story, I've told it a million times, but I never came back from that quite the same person I was in terms of my awarenesses. I knew that the world I operated in, the earth, was a very small fragment of something much, much bigger. And that the vastness of that thing was somehow my essence. And that began to percolate through the entire journey that I went on. And for 50 years, I searched for understanding and meaning. What was that? Why does this little world that most of us live in quite blindly and unexpectedly and beyond our even understanding, why does this world have such a vast aspect that so few people know? And so I began this journey into the philosophies and the theologies of Eastern mysticism and even Western mysticism, and I began to see there's been teachings about this forever, and these teachings were very informative. And I met a teacher named Rudy, and I'm sitting here today as someone who continues to, in a sense, unfold this wisdom that he brought into my life, a way of looking at the world and a way of understanding the world. And it has been a remarkable journey. At one point, after 44 years of sitting every day and meditating and reaching for the vastness of this awareness that has, in a sense, informed my life, something happened, and the Bruce part of it that was looking went, and it kind of went away. And there was just all of this, the bigness of it. But it still inhabited this mind-body thing that was walking around this Victorian lodge a few days ago and realizing I'm still Bruce. I'm still this person. I am infinitely aware of how big I am, and that I am one with the totality of all that is. I'm also aware that you are as well, that I am no different than you. The only difference is that I became obsessed with this larger package than many other people have. It has informed my life, but has it brought about change? In truth, the feeling for me and the shock of walking around this Mohonk preserve was, no, still me, still me, same old guy. All of the neuroses and all of the biological processes, and now, because I'm getting old, pain. Lots of pain. And I don't want to talk about pain exclusively today, but I want to talk about it in a way that I think is really important, because it becomes a bigger and bigger focal point as you get older. And one of the things it does is it squishes you back into the biological you. And that's where you start to discover your humanity and the fact that change, as you think it has occurred, maybe hasn't. Because once you inhabit this body in the same way you inhabited it when you were a little child and a teenager and a 20-year-old person, this body is now really, really defining you in its lack of ability to sleep. In the, you know, I told you I had an IT band problem. It's really painful and it wakes me up at night. I have disc problems in my neck. I mean, on and on. I don't want to give you a litany of my problems, but I want you to know at one point you're going to have them. It's inevitable. And they will begin to speak to you loudly, and you will not be happy with it. You will become angry at the bargain you made to come here, because you don't leave here comfortably. It's really hard to get old. It's hard to lose everything you thought you had, watching it all go away. And you go, well, what was that thing I was trying to do to get everything? What were all these changes I thought I was making to be a better human being when all I become is a person who's complaining that my back hurts? What is it exactly that we are doing here? Well, one of the things I realize that I'm doing is I am being human. I am a human being. My being, thanks to years of sitting, is not limited to the physical. I have doorways that open me into something greater. They go inward and out. The material out is filled with time and space, planets, galaxies, Big Bang or Big Bangs. The outer world, the biological world, the physical world, is a world of positives and negatives, joy and suffering, and all of the dualities that exist in the human condition. And everyone who comes into this world realizes that they are part of a process that has to do with positive and negative, up and down, good and evil, life and death, breath in, breath out. But if you find somehow in your life experience, if you stumble upon a need for something beyond that definition, if something in you stirs you in some initiatory way into looking inward, which is usually pain, emotional, physical, or otherwise, something starts to push you in. And if you sit still against all of your better instincts, because all of us are terrified of stillness. Nobody likes to sit still because it seems unproductive, meaningless, waste of time, all of the issues that we have with just sitting still. But if you can force yourself through the muscular capacity to let go of being busy, let go of having to do, to strive, to reach out, just be still, this doorway opens up inside you, and it opens you up into a place that is timeless and spaceless. Some people think it liberates you from the material world. It liberates you from pain. It liberates you from suffering. I don't buy that. But it does give you a perspective on pain, and it gives you a perspective on the biological. It doesn't make you something superhuman, usually. it makes you human. To be fully human is to experience the density and the massive weight of being an external figure with the lightness of beauty and truth of what lies inside you and has always been inside you, which has no boundary, no time, no space. It just is. It is vast, indescribable, ongoing reality. If you're trying to escape into that space, you will miss half of the human equation. One half of the human equation is biological. Another half, if you will, if you can get to make it a half, is this inner spirit, if you will, quality of being, of knowing, of awareness, of attunement to something greater. That's the spiritual journey. The spiritual journey is not to get away from the world, it's to balance yourself in the world. To be physical and material and spiritual and immaterial, all at the same time. It is a confusing place because it is not knowable. Everything you read in all of your studies on mysticism and on spirituality and on religion and philosophy and theology, all of those things which hold water in a sense in the material world start to evaporate in the immaterial world because none of it gets to the reality. Everything you have conceptually is something that makes you feel secure or comfortable, something you can hold on to. But here's what happens, and unfortunately it's going to happen to everybody. This whole material thing is going to implode, crumble into itself, and everything you know, everything you believe, everything you think is precious, everything you hold on to, starting with your lovers and your friends and your children or grandchildren or whatever it is you have in life, they are all going to go away. And what will be left is this inner reality that if you have had a full life will begin to expand to encompass all that ever was or will be. When you enter that space at the very end of this journey, those who had a life of practice will be able to go, yes, yes. Those who have not been introduced to this inner space are going to be stunned by it. Now maybe if you've had a good Judeo-Christian upbringing and you believe in heaven or hell or whatever those things are, when you get introduced to the doorway into the infinite, you will assume it to be heaven or hell based on your predilections. You will look at it and go, I'm not ready. Or, I was a good person, take me. You can sort of measure that on your own. But for most people, that doorway is a huge threshold. The great saints, I am assuming, because I don't know, but the great saints, and I look at somebody like Swami Nityananda, who I never met, but I touched his bed, and I sat in the spaces that he inhabited, and I was filled with something deeply affirming. I believe somebody like that, who walked around it with awful arthritis as far as I can tell, and all sorts of biological pain, but he lived so beyond the physical, but he was this vastness made carnate, vastness in a body, but bigger than anything I know that I've ever witnessed. I can only look to somebody like that and go, 1 in a billion pulls that off. So if that's something you think you're trying to get to, you know, maybe, good luck. trying to get to a totally realized, transcendent oneness with everything can happen. The Buddha mind, Buddha nature. But most of us are lucky to become balanced, equalized human beings, meaning that the outer and the inner start to work simultaneously and to give us a foundation of being that is grateful to be here. The great thing about the inner life is that it brings the outer life into a place of enormous wonder. You don't look at the world around you and go, oh God, the world, you go, oh my God. You cannot believe the diversity, the fullness of the world. My bar mitzvah portion was, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And I repeated that forever, learning those lines, but only recently did the fullness thereof completely overwhelm me. The fullness thereof is what we wake up to every morning. Sleep is where we withdraw into something else, which is not necessarily the same thing as this vastness of being. It's a resting space in which you can unconsciously communicate with something bigger, but basically it's just a restorative space in order to find your bearings and prepare yourself again for the fullness that you will witness when your eyes open in the morning. I am starting to have the worst sleeps imaginable. I cannot go deep enough. The pains start to overtake me. The pattern of sleep is completely evaporated. All of my friends, everyone other than my wife, who has the most beautiful sleep ever, but everyone else I know who's getting older has these strange sleeps where you wake up after 3 hours and you're wide awake and you don't know how to go back to sleep, and people are trying to figure out what to do. There are narcotics you can take. I've tried a couple of them. I will tell you, they are narcotics. They're terrible. I don't like them. I don't want something to give me that sleep. I want sleep. So what I do is I lie there and realize I need to work in this space. I am no longer going to get sleep the way I did as a child and as a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. Sleep is another consciousness. It's another doorway to knowing. And so now I sit there in sleep, sometimes lie there, and it's work. And it's Rudy's work. It's entering into the dynamic, entering into the pain, entering into the movement of energies that are happening, watching, not reacting, not giving myself over to struggle and anger, but just going, okay. It's hard when you get up in the morning and you don't have any extra energy, but you really have gone through another level of the spiritual journey. I didn't know about this. It's really come at me, and I'm going, wow, but thank God I have a practice. I have a mechanism that learns to go yes to this unacceptably difficult condition. But it's only one of unacceptable conditions. And what you realize, it's the beginning of the dismantling of your material self. When your dream life, your physical life, your sleep life starts to deteriorate, you are being disassembled, disintegrated, and you will feel it. Your memory starts to go, your clarity starts to go. So many things about your life that were cohering are no longer coherent. And you go, what is this? And at that point in time, if you want to find gratitude, look to your spiritual practice. Because I can watch myself disappear and be okay. I keep handing myself over to myself. I keep letting myself be the very thing that is observing this process. Because that's who I am and who I've always been. This person of trying to change, the person who entered into a spiritual life that's trying to become more and better and more evolved, really, the only thing you're becoming in the end is more aware of your dissolution. It's not a growth, it's not a change, it's just a presence that goes, aha. And you become much more accepting of the reality of the moment. And it also provides you with this extraordinarily exquisite space called the moment. The present moment. The present moment is what we live in, what we have always lived in. The future moment has yet to arrive, and when it does, of course, you've heard this 1,000 times, it becomes the present moment. The past moment is long gone, and if you're just dreaming about it and trying to hold on to it, of course, that's your obsession with something in the past in the present moment. But the present moment in a point of stillness, of great stillness, is the very essence of your spiritual practice. It is the embrace of the moment, the embrace of you, the embrace of life, the embrace of being, and it is profoundly comforting. When you are struggling in the middle of the night, when you are in pain, when you are dealing with all the stuff that life will bring you if it hasn't, and I don't mean to make this a curse because it's not, it's what happens. It's the way it works. As it starts to disintegrate, the present moment allows you to sit in stillness and go, it's a very, very fine point to be still and not project your fears into the future and not to reach into the attachments to the past, but just to be in the moment is salvation and joy and simplicity and clarity, and it takes work because your mind is going to go, and you got to go, no, 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 no. And your past is going to go, well, no, 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 no. Come back to now. Now is the doorway to all that is. Now is all there is. It's all there ever has been. And you live in now. Again, when now becomes painful, it means the outer universe of your being is being brought to an end. And if you haven't found the doorway into the endless vastness, infinite, spaceless, timeless reality, you're going to be caught by the outer form. The inner form is what you've been searching for. It's why you're hearing this talk. It's why you're in this class. It's why you've come to Rudy's practice or whatever meditative practice you have found. It's essential. It is crucial. This is the life that you have opted to find, and you will find it if you do the work. Doing the work is, I use the line, stop, sit, stay. Like talking to a dog. Stop, sit, stay. Get quiet. Do it every day. Get it to be something you know how to do, not only because it's worth doing, but because it's the best place to exist. It's a wonderful space to inhabit. And if you can find your way into that space, you will experience something that will be an exquisite navigational tool for everything you have to go through in this lifetime. So I'm not trying to guilt you into having your regular meditation or your disciplined meditation. I'm just trying to tell you things are going to unfold, and you are going to find, if you have this capacity, you will be on the path to liberation as opposed to the path of fear and distrust and disturbance. Life is a tricky journey, and again, I don't know that I can tell you why we're alive, why we exist, what this is all about, but I do know something much bigger than us wanted us here. Something much bigger than us created us. Something much bigger than us knows our journey. Not only does it know it, it witnesses every molecule of your journey. It witnesses you. That witness is you, but it's a you don't know. Learning to know that witness, learning to know the thing that brought you into this world, even though it may never come into a place where you can go, oh, that's what it is, or I get it. Maybe that won't happen, but you will get to a place of going, okay. And you will feel knowledge. You will feel wisdom. You will feel truth. You may not be able to cognate it. You may not be able to bring it into words. You will feel it, and you will feel blessed because of it. Find your way to the balance of your life. Find your way to the unchangeable truth. Change is about the world and the outer form, and the change you experience in the outer world and the outer form is predictable from the start. There's nothing you can do about it. The changeless space, which you can learn to discover in yourself, is something you can put your mind to, your time and effort to, and it will reward you by bringing you into a mindless, timeless, spaceless reality that has always been and will always be and is who you really are. That's what we're all about, guys. And don't get too caught up in change. Find the changeless. Any questions?
It isn't a question, but I just want to thank you so much for addressing the pain and sleeplessness of growing old. I'm older than you, and I had a pretty painful experience last evening. The bus driver from New York, instead of letting me off in the middle of Fishman somewhere, took me right to the end. It was thunder and lightning and pouring like I have never experienced. And, you know, I have an arthritic knee and an arthritic hip, and I had to pull a carry-on bag and a cushion for here and a handbag. So I had no hand for an umbrella. Anyway, I thought, so, Bruce would say. I'm going to get soaked, but I thought, well, I think this hip and this knee will get me there.
You know, Dale, you've inspired me from the day I met you. I don't know anybody like you, including myself. I would have been yelling and crying and cursing the universe because I don't like to be uncomfortable like that. But what I would also have done in that situation would be to try to arrive at what you arrived at, which is so. You have to get there. And it's work to get there. You've been doing it your whole life, which is why you could walk in the rain. And I'm really sorry to hear that story, but I really...
Well, you know, it was okay, because I discovered something that when I first met your teachings through Buddha at the gas pump, some 3 years ago, I was trying to become more spiritual. And I thought, now I'm getting older, and you know, this is time, you know, time's running out here. And when I met you, it was just like something just opened up in me that said, you don't have to become more spiritual. And through this growing old and experiencing this coming into my humanness even more, I've come to realize that the awareness that I've learned I am, has no problem with Dale being Dale. But when you used to say, you know, Bruce disappeared, and I'd be praying, oh yes, God, help Dale disappear. But the awareness has no problem with Dale.
I'm so happy you said that. I mean, that's one thing I wanted to say today and didn't get to, but I'm going to say it just very quickly. Just what you said, because you were one of the great teachers, really. The universe has no problem with you being you, exactly as you are. It has no problem. You have a problem with you being you. The universe has no problem. It loves you. I don't know how to express that. You can be the biggest schmuck in the world. It loves you. It would love you to be happier, honestly. It would love you to be freer. But it loves you as you are, and I cannot begin to express how profoundly that's true. You're fine as you are. You may not be happy, and you may not be able to deal with the reality of life, but here's a possible way to help you. On the other hand, if you don't go there, okay. Okay, most people don't go there. Most people just go through it and struggle, and the universe is so grateful for you being part of its manifested truth. It loves that you came into being. It went to a lot of trouble to bring you here. And every so often we evolve into really exquisite beings. And Dale, who I've now known for what, 4 years, 5 years? How many years have we known each other now? It's about 5 years?
What?
How many years have we known one another? It's not,
Two and a bit.
is that it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. You meet people along the way who really inspire you and help you understand who and what you can become on this journey. And then you just try to let go of the bullshit that you're holding on to, the judgment, the self-hatred, all of that stuff. You just go, guys, this is who I am, period. You know, your children want you to be different, your parents want you to be different, your friends want you to be different. Don't be my parents, don't be my friends, don't be my children. I am who I am. And you get to that place, and it is very freeing, because there's not much you can really do about it except pretend to be somebody you're not, which is okay if you want to pretend, if you want to go on that ride. But the truth is, you're fine, good, worthy as you are. Even the worst of us is part of something grand and amazing. And knowing that is really important. Any other questions? Statements?
With death, I've had 3 deaths this summer, and one just last week, and I don't know, it was my friend from college, she fell from a cliff, so if she wasn't in that place, is there a way for me to help her?
Say that, if she wasn't in what place?
In a place being right with transition.
I see. There are many traditions, certainly Buddhist tradition, Christian, Judeo-Christians, of prayer for a soul. Rudy used to say, when a person dies, send all the love you have into the void that they left behind, and it will trail after them. It will go to them. And I think there's some real value and truth to that. You know, I mean, it's like, it's part of the human drama and story to believe those things. I think the real operation is different than that. But the psyche feeding a soul, to me, is real. You know, if you can give love and nourishment in the absence of somebody into the space they left behind, and usually it's a big space, I think it trails after them and fills them in some way. So I would say, keep the love going. You know, don't write them off, and clearly you haven't. And it will do something. It certainly will do something for you. And I believe, again, these are such powerful unknowns, but I do believe in the oneness of our totality. All of the love we offer anybody coheres. It's worth it. That's why when I sit here in this class, this energy comes through that loves you. And it loves every one of you distinctly. But it really loves you. And I get to be here and go, you know, I haven't lived with you. I haven't spent a life with you. I don't know all the story of you. I don't know all the drama of you. All I know is I love you. It is an amazing truth. It bypasses the story of you, and it just goes to you. And every one of you is particular in that, and it loves the particularity of that. And so if you were not here, my love would go to that particularity that you have manifested, whether you're still here or have moved beyond. Because your particularity was astoundingly real to me and to this thing that witnesses you. It loves that you're so distinctive. In everybody's case, it loves it. And if you don't love it, that's your problem. But you can learn to love it. Maybe that's what change and growth is. Learning to accept and love your own being. That's all. That's the journey. And if you don't do it, you don't do it. It doesn't mean you're not loved. It's just that you never got on board.
This probably won't help, but lot of death, you know, friends of family, things like that. My thought and comfort to those people is always that their work was done here and that they moved on. And we all have that expiration date, and that's it.
Well, I mean, I do think the reality of death is very awakening. You know, there's no escaping that Mount Everest of the human experience. And you have to climb the mountain by yourself, and you go by yourself, and it's really powerful. What happens afterward, we can tell stories about it. I can give you stories, you have stories, we all have stories. Doesn't matter. You just have to go to that space and see how you deal with it. You know, yes, no, not me, take somebody else, whatever your thing is. You know, you're going to find out your story, and at some point it wins. So you might as well learn, one, that journey is there, two, that there's a way of accepting it long before it occurs, or to work toward that, and when the time comes, go, ah, so. Or thy will be done, or whatever it is, whatever happens. You know? And my intimation from my own inner journey is that there's no end. There's no end. It just goes on, but not the way you're used to it. It'll be different, but it will be deeply known. It will not be unfamiliar. It'll be, oh, I think. Anybody else? Okay.